Hello, we are back again with another live. You've seen the title, you know what it says. We are talking to Charlie Sarsfield. Hello, hello, hello. If you're just joining, you see the title, you know who we're talking to. We are talking to Charlie Sarsfield from Untold Studios. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get him directly in. Just a little bit of backstory. Charlie Sarsfield has worked with many celebrities, has worked with Stormzy, has worked with Youngblood, has worked with Rita Ora, has worked with Billie Eilish, as well as being a director, he's also a photographer. So there's gonna be a lot of questions. I'm gonna get him straight in because honestly, the CV is long, okay? And remember, if you've got questions, please ask them. This is your time as well as ours. And this is the time that you could be getting advice. So I'm gonna get him right on in. Welcome, everybody. Hello.
Hey, dude. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. I've never done one of
Have you
these, so it's a
not?
first. No.
Right, I'll
So,
refrain from fangirling while we do this. So just to jump in, because we've not got
no.
long, but we're gonna make this work.
Yep.
We want to sort of like know essentially like your overall like your journey and how you got started, and where you started. But one thing I always ask everybody because everybody I feel like defines it differently but the same. How do you define what you do?
Oh, God. Uh, I I suppose like we problem solve more than anything, I think. And it's in a very creative way, but whether it's marketing like a song or a product, we have to problem solve a budget into making something that people want to watch. So that maybe, I mean, it makes it sound a bit dull. Really, it should be like, oh, it's so artistic and what we do is great, but actually, it's more commercial than that, probably.
Yeah.
Uh, and then my journey is kind of a weird one. I grew up in Cornwall and then moved to London to go to university and kind of, I studied like media, and they were just like, study what you want, like go photography, do film, do whatever you want. And I always had a stills camera when I was younger. And then basically when I moved to London, I just started like going to gigs and oh god, uh, it's difficult because people are asking.
No,
Anyway, I
no,
basically I
ignore them.
ignore that.
That's
Okay,
me.
fine. You
Just as
do
a
that.
note,
Okay,
yes, we
fine.
will be saving this live. It'll be on the Shiny channel. You'll check it out there. It'll also be on this Instagram. Don't worry about that. Also, ask questions in the live. I'll answer them. Don't worry. Anyway,
Okay, I'm going to
continue.
ignore. So basically, I came to university in London, and then while I was at uni, I kind of knew that I wanted to do photography. So I was taking photos, and I would go to like live nights and basically hassle people to let me take photographs of their artists. And basically, this label called Communion gave me a chance. They were run by Ben Lovett of Mumford and Sons, and I was like a young kid, just being like, "Can I take photos of whoever you've got?" And they had like Michael Kiwanuka, Gautier, like Ben Howard, people like that. And so I'd go to these gigs, like not really knowing what I'm doing, taking photos, and then just sending the photos to the label, and that kind of. And then I got a call from Maz at Communion, and he basically was just like, "Do you shoot video?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." Never. And then basically I got linked up with their videographer, who's a director called Baby Sweet or Greg Houston, and he's like amazing. And basically, he kind of taught me everything, and it was just like 5D Mark II days,
Oh
and then
yes.
yeah, the glory days.
Yeah.
And then through Greg, I met this guy called Ewan Allardyce, who was kind of like my first Yoda or mentor, and he worked for a production company called Remedy, who made a lot of stuff for MTV. So he basically called me up when I graduated, and basically offered me a job at Remedy. And so I was like a runner at Remedy, making loads of stuff for MTV back in the day, and like painting studio floors, learning how to use second camera, learning how to light, learning how to do sound.
So
So it was
you
kind of like
So you basically started off like at a very sort of like rudimentary level where you were just like, I'm just interested in this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do stuff. I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna meet people, and then kind of just like worked your way into
yeah.
that way.
I mean, you get every, I suppose, every director who's worked with kind of big people, I suppose, has has really lucky breaks through it. And like mine was definitely like those days. We had the keys to the studio and would just go in there at weekends and shoot stuff, or if we had down days, we'd shoot stuff. And then we did Maya Jama's screen test, and then we became really good friends. Like I was directing in a duo kind of back then with a guy called Jordan Bond, and me, Jordan, and Maya became quite good, like really good friends, and would hang out lots. And then she introduced us to a rapper called Michael, who then basically became Stormzy, and we would shoot like we shot like the G Factor, which I think must be like 10 years old now, but that was kind of like his push for Shut Up to be Christmas number one and all of that. And we shot that with just like got like eight of our mates to all hold cameras and just shoot it, and we stayed up quite late making that, and then it just snowballed really. And then like I left Remedy and worked at a production company called Lemonade Money, with like kind of under the mentorship of like Sean James Grant and Jeremy Cole. And then like it was kind of like me and Jordan, and then the rest were there, who are another great directing duo. And it kind of just all built naturally. And then we got an agent, and I was with her for ages. And then I kind of moved to Untold, and that's kind of like my 10-year sort of career in,
Mad.
yeah.
Do you know
And
what I love is that
really,
you were
yeah.
able to condense that down, which well done.
I've definitely like missed loads of like really big, and everyone will be annoyed with me, but it's that
But
kind of thing, really.
what I really want to ask you is like, how did you get involved with Untold? Like, what was the kind of relationship there, and how did that build?
So Mike, who probably is on this, like stalking me, making sure that I am actually doing this and not lying to him about not doing work for a good reason. But he's my EP at Untold, and I was at a production company with him called Burning Real a few years before Untold, and then I I think he left. Yeah, there he is. I think he left Burning, or I left Burning Real, and then he moved from Burning Real to Untold. And I think he basically was at Untold and was just like, "Oh, you should talk to this guy called Charlie." And then I met Annie, who's the head of music at Untold, and then it kind of all went from there. So I remember like meeting Annie and her just being like, "What do you want to do?" And I was just like, "Everything." And then she kind of made that happen. Like we sort of, between me, her, and Mike, we were like, after lockdown, it all went quite busy, and we made like, yeah, everything that you kind of mentioned before I got on this call, really.
Mad. Okay, so then when it came to moving, I guess because a lot of people that are going to be watching might be people that are like in their early careers, not sure the journey, and obviously from what you said, it's been kind of like a long stint of just like different things and like working on different things. Um, what I want to sort of ask you is like what sort of changed in the work that you were doing, like for example at Burning Real, like in terms of like how you know, if we go into the specifics, building treatments, you know, working with like sort of, you know, celebrity clients, like what do you feel like is the physical difference now that sort of changed?
I suppose the only thing that really changes is everything gets bigger, right? So fundamentally, we're still making what we made. Like I'm still making the same thing that I made post production, same thing that I made when I was at like uni, when I was filming my mate in the back garden. It's still the same. You've still got to worry about sound, the picture, what you're trying to achieve, and what the output is. Whereas now, now I have HODs, like head of department. So I have someone who is in charge of camera. I have someone who's in charge of this and that and everything. So I suppose like treatments are bigger and more in detail, like the bigger the budget is, and that's kind of, or the bigger the idea is really. And a treatment, I always say, should be as short as it can be to deliver the idea that you're trying to get across. But sometimes that's really hard to do. So sometimes the treatment could be 50 pages, sometimes it's eight, and you try and condense that. But I think it's probably like there's, I want to, yeah, it's like there's pressure, there's more pressure on it, I suppose, and the bigger the job, the more clients there are. Like, did a commercial before Christmas, and there was, you know, loads of clients on that, and you're getting asked a million different questions, and so you've got to be quite like, you know, you can't go into a shoot not really knowing what you're doing. And there are some directors that can do that, and it's a talent in itself, whereas I have to have a very detailed shot list and have very detailed, like, tech recce is extremely detailed, and we kind of go into it knowing exactly what we're shooting before shooting it, and hopefully having room to have some fun. But I suppose, yeah, the size of production is the biggest thing that's changed over the sort of last 5 years of being at Untold. It's kind of like everything's got bigger. Like, we shot Billie Eilish last year, and that was a massive crew. And so, you know, you get to a point where you don't really know everyone that's on your set. And that's kind of a hard thing for me, because I'm quite a personable person. And my crew here in London, I kind of work with that crew quite like relentlessly. And that helps up the workflow, I suppose. But I think size of production and, yeah, like post, you know, you get longer in post, I suppose. And I think in commercials, you get a lot longer in post than you do on music videos, whereas kind of like, you know, the folk tales of having to shoot a music video and then deliver it that evening still exist, and that still happens. But I try not to dabble in those ones.
I just thank you for that. I also want to say, just to remind everyone, feel free to ask questions. Any question, keep it appropriate. Because remember, like these. Oh, actually, we do have a question. I know it's complex, but how do you approach visual concepts for music videos?
It's different with every artist that I've worked with. Like, and I think uh, some artists have a creative vision for themselves, and those guys I love, because you then have like an immediate bounce board, and the ideas come quite naturally and they can flow quite quickly. Whereas then, but sometimes that's negative, right? Because ideas are flowing, and by 3 hours into that conversation, the idea's got so big that you need $1 million to make the idea, and that's terrifying. And then sometimes you get a brief and it's like, here's the song, here's the budget, we've got no ideas, come up with it. And then you've got to come up with the idea. So I suppose the way I do it, and I normally come up with the core idea when I'm like traveling to work or whatever. And so my notes on my phone is like my like notepad, really, where I just have so many random ideas. And sometimes the idea comes quite quickly, like in 5 minutes of getting sent the brief, I'll be on the bus or the train. And by the time I've got off the train, the treatment's pretty much written. And then sometimes you have an idea that you want to make, or you come up with an idea, and then, you know, somewhere along the line, a track comes in that goes, oh, that would work really well. So it kind of happens all the time. Like, you know, my girlfriend, she kind of always goes on about how, like, I can listen to a song, and then by the end of the song, I've got an idea of what that should look like. And I suppose that's training, really. Like, I know the sort of sandbox in which I create in and what I want to make, and my ideas always are born out of that. So after kind of 10 years of making, you kind of know how you want to make stuff, I suppose.
So then,
And then,
yeah, no, that I want to sort of move, sort of jump forward and sort of like, I guess, more towards like, because we're going to jump back and forth between advice and kind of like your career. What
yeah.
would you say to sort of directors now that are like looking to get into like doing music videos, considering now it's a bit,
There's other good careers there.
I'll keep
No.
my opinions conserved on that. But what would you say to anyone that's like, I really love doing music videos, or you know, wants to sort of get to the trajectory that you're at, where you're working with these artists? Like, what is the best course of action? If, say, for example, you've done, you know, music videos for a while, you've got some experience, and you want to just be like, right, I want to work with this person, or you know, maybe not the top person, but maybe
Yeah.
you know, someone established.
I suppose, like, if you make music videos, you have to love music, and I've always, like, I will always make music videos, even if I, you know, God forbid, go and make feature films. Like, I'll always make music videos because I love music, and sometimes you hear music that potentially, you know, from an unsigned artist, and you want to make with them, and that's great. And I think like what I would say is, in the music video world, you're very much judged on your last music video, and everyone's sort of memory of you is quite short. So you've got to make music videos that it's hard to explain, but you kind of want to make videos that you want to make, if that makes sense. So like, if you want to make rock videos, you've got to make rock music videos. I've always been quite lucky in the way that I love all music. And I think if you look at my CV, you can kind of see that, because I go and make a pop video, but then I'll go and make a rap video, or I'll, you know, and I kind of dabble in all genres. But I think like with music videos, the core idea is always the most important. And I think like the bigger the budget, the more toys you've got. But at the end of the day, if your core idea is bad, then it will be a bad video, whatever the budget. So I suppose it's like, focus on the core idea, and even if you've got a tenner to make the video, if the idea is great, then the video will be great, if that makes sense.
No, it does. That's
Um,
actually super helpful.
yeah, and also just make loads. Like, I think when you're starting your career, like I went through a period in my career where I just made everything, like every brief that hit my inbox. I wanted to challenge myself to just make that. I wanted to make that my thing, of just like challenging myself to make those types of videos that maybe I wouldn't have already.
Mm. To sort of stretch and like expand your horizons of like what you could do, and like your sort of like repertoire.
Yeah, exactly. And just like experiment. I think we often forget that we're so lucky to do this job. And, you know, I know that I'm in a pretty privileged position where I make a living from doing something that I love to do. And there are, you know, I meet loads of young creatives who kind of reach out to me and want to, you know, chat about the industry. And I'm always like, it is difficult to get. There's so many directors now, and kind of it is hard to stand out and to continue to work. And especially now more than ever, like in music, and commercial markets are extremely competitive. So you've got to love it, and kind of accept that there are going to be stressful times.
Very much that.
Yeah.
We've got another question, which is how can we approach a new client or job in this new generation? I know it's time consuming, but I really love. Cool.
um,
Uh,
I suppose I've like, again, it goes back to this thing of like, you've got to shoot stuff that you want to shoot. So if you want to, like, I've got a friend who loves Arsenal Football Club, and he's just graduated from national, I think the National Film and Television School, but he's a DOP, and he's like a young guy called Harry Blackley, and he's great, like super talented dude. But he, you know, he wants to shoot stuff for Arsenal Football Club. So in his garage, he set up some lights, and he shot an Arsenal shirt flapping around and lights going everywhere. And then yesterday he just put out a shoot that he did with Arsenal because Arsenal Football Club saw his film. So I suppose like that's a prime example of making the stuff that you want to make, and it getting you a job that you want. So I suppose like the world's so global now that if you do post something on Instagram, the chances are someone will see it. Like, you know, one of the artists that I work with, one of his fans made a long documentary on that artist, just put it up on YouTube, and the artist saw it. So, and he's got millions of followers. So all I'm saying is that if you make something, there is chance that people will see it. So I think just like, yeah, making stuff and being productive is the best way to get into the industry.
it's
Kill them with content is
yeah.
basically it's exhausting though, but yeah.
It's so interesting that you say that, because it's almost kind of like one thing I've always said is like it's kind of like having a shop where it's like make the thing that you want to make, and someone will come in and say I want that but in blue.
Yeah, exactly. And even in what I do, like, you know, you shoot a car commercial and then someone can go, oh, you shot a car commercial. but getting the first car commercial is always the hardest. Getting your fifth is easier. Um, so you just kind of, yeah, like, again, being creative with stuff. Like, if you want to shoot a car commercial, you can buy a large toy and shoot something with that, and no one will know it's a toy, really, if it's a good enough version. So I just think there's loads of ways. You've just got to be so creative, I think, nowadays, especially with, I always talk, one of my friends is a photographer, and he can go out traveling and take photos, and he's got a body of work from it. Whereas what we do, or in moving image, often you need like an army to make something. And so it's hard to make those personal projects, but when you do, they're more rewarding than anything else that you do.
Mm. No,
Maybe.
no, I agree. I agree. I'm like stuck in like story time listening mode. Like, yeah, that's so yeah. We've got another question. What would you say to early mid-career commercial directors looking to get signed? Do all your commercial briefs come through Untold?
Yeah, I suppose it's a tricky one. Like, I think in the modern day, a lot of, like, if you want to, how do I word this without pissing anyone off?
I
Um,
guess
it's it's
condense and make it easier for that question. It's like looking to get signed. What would you say to? So basically, how would a
yeah, how do
director
you
get
get signed?
signed? How do you
Yeah,
get signed?
how
Yeah,
do I get?
exactly.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Again, by making work, I think is the best. Is, again, it all comes down to making work, right? So, um, making work. EPs, producers, heads of production companies are always on the lookout for new talent, and I think that there probably has, especially now more than ever, I think, like, it kind of happens generationally, but like, I'm considered a young director, even though I'm not that young. And I know loads of, like, 24, 25-year-old directors who I think are amazing. But I think it's kind of one of them where EPs and producers want to find the next best thing. And, they've probably got 3 or 4 directors that they thought at one point were the next best thing. And then now are older, and so I think, like, all I'd say is you've got to have faith that your stuff will be found if it's good enough, um, and that's not to say that you're not good enough to be signed. That's just saying that it takes a certain level to get signed. It's quite a big investment for a production company to sign a director, and 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 you can't, like, follow. I always say, like, if you've got favorite directors that you follow on Instagram, they should post all of their credits for every job they do. When they post all of the credits, follow and annoy their EPs. And this is, you can go and annoy Mike Heath, he'll love that. But it's kind of one of them where, like, even if it's just finding their email and sending your work to them, yeah, it's annoying, but it's annoying for the EP, but there might be a piece of work in there that they've just had a brief and your work completely fits that. So I think it's kind of like, you need to try and bang on doors and kick doors down, because that's the way it works. It is hard, and you've kind of got to hand it just someone, and they'll probably see it. Say that's the way to do it. Is like, send them DMs of your latest work, or send them emails or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely worth trying to reach out to producers and EPs and production companies that you like the work of. I think there's a lot of directors that just want to get signed, but actually it's like your work suits certain production companies more than others. So target the production companies that you think your work aligns with, really.
That's really good advice, like in terms of just essentially almost kind of like calm down
Yeah, yeah,
and essentially be like, listen to your work, listen to your own voice. What does basically water your plant, like, which is your work, in the way that it needs to be kind
yeah,
of watered.
yeah, exactly. And I think, everyone wants to be signed by the best production company, but in reality, that might happen down the line or never. But that doesn't mean you can go and make great work and get all the briefs that you've ever wanted. But also, if you sign to the wrong production company, it can ruin years of your career. So it's a big step to sign with someone because you're essentially going, here's my career, which is really important to me. Can you now look after it? And you're always going to get frustrated. I think every director in London is probably quite frustrated with how the last 2 years have been. But if you have faith in the people that are finding your work and your jobs, and you know that they have your best interests at heart, then you're in a safe place. Whereas if you're somewhere where you think they maybe don't value you, then it's a world of pain, right?
Mm.
So it's a team game, both on set and like even offset. As a director, you need your producer and EPs to be like a team, and you're all pushing towards one goal,
Mm.
really.
I'm gonna combinize. I'm gonna make up a word.
Combinize,
Combinize,
yeah, nice.
combinize two questions in one because I've got one more question. I've also got a question that's come in. Mike, the combine part one of it is, what is the biggest learning curve you've had like in your career as this sort of like upwards trajectory? What is the biggest learning curve that you've experienced? While also, what advice would you give to your younger self going into this industry?
My advice would be to try and enjoy it more. And I
Mm.
look back at my last 10 years, and I've basically been stressed the
That
whole
feels like life
time.
advice.
Yeah. And I'm trying in my sort of new era of being a director of literally just like being confident and trying to be happy with where I'm at. I suppose the biggest learning, or the biggest, like, you do lose jobs, and I think that's fine. And I've pitched on some jobs that I've really, really wanted, and I've lost them, and it's really hurt. And then I see the video that comes out, and maybe I don't like the video, and that hurts even more. And I think it's kind of like, I've also had videos that I've made that have never seen the light of day in my earlier career, and that's fine as well. Like, that happens. I think most directors have had that. And I think it's all about like understanding why that happened, and learning from it, which is such like a insert quote here. But I think it's like, you do, like, the nuances of being a director are so like intense, and sometimes it is about reading the smallest bit of information and trying to understand why that person didn't like something. I've basically been stressed 10 years, yeah. um, but and yeah, but I think also understanding that everyone's different and everyone likes different stuff. So sometimes you are delivering a product to someone who maybe doesn't like something that you've done, and you need to understand that it is all subjective, right? And so also, like, a video that I might not like, someone else might love, or whatever. So there's no right or wrong in this industry. So you kind of need to, and also understand that criticism isn't personal. It's something that I've like tried to understand more in the last few years. It's like, people are allowed to criticize stuff, and it's not an attack on you or an attack on your aesthetic. It's more just them going, I don't think this is right for this particular project.
No, that's perfect. I've got another combi question because we've not got long.
Don't worry, it's fine.
The
I've got half an hour until I need to leave.
the combi question is because I want to end on the last question that someone else has asked. Um, Essentially, what I wanted to ask is, what would you say to a director that's starting out now? So if you said to them like, right, what's the first thing that you should be doing? Like they've just jumped into this game. They're like, I was working in accounting. I'm trying to be a director now.
I'd
What would you say to
say
that person?
go back to accounting. No, I would say the first thing, you've got to you've got to know your reference points. And I think a lot of directors try to like chase the cool aesthetic, whereas like, if you love 70s cinema, that's your reference point. And don't try and make something that's deemed modern and cool if that's not what you want to make and what you love and what kind of got you into it. And I suppose, like, some people might love Edgar Wright, and and so if that's your reference point of your visual language, then you've got to try and display that that is your visual language, right? So I think like first and foremost, it's building the foundations of your visual language and how you communicate the ideas that are in your head to other people. So that it's like your toolbox. It's like, how do you shoot portraits? Why do you shoot portraits? If you're shooting conversations, how do you shoot that? Do you do your music performances in one shot? Do you do them in multiple cameras? Like everyone's got their own flavor, and you need to know what you like so that you can then build on those uh, sort of ideas, I suppose. Does that make
No,
sense?
it does. It honestly
Yeah.
does. Like
Okay. Cool.
it really does. And I think a lot of people needed to hear that, because I think at the moment it's like, I won't speak too much on that, but like there is this need to kind of feel like that person did something really great. I need to copy that. I need to sort of mimic and ghost that
Mm.
in order to get like seen and heard. And what you're saying essentially is like, no, be yourself.
Yeah. Do
like the things
clout.
that you like.
Yeah, clout's overrated. I always like that's my thing. Is like it's better to make what you love than make what your best mate likes.
Yeah.
Because you should be your biggest audience and critic to that. And I think a lot of people do chase, like, even when you're starting out, in, like, I remember being at uni and on my photography course, they were like, choose your favorite photo, now recreate it. And I was like, this is such a bad exercise because you shouldn't do that. So it's like, don't get me wrong, you lean on things and you reference stuff. And you essentially like copy to an extent and then make it your own, right? So I'm not saying that you can't be inspired by things, but you've got to work out what they are in your world, and
Mm.
that's the most important thing.
So we've got more questions because they end up being really good questions towards the end. Guys,
Yeah,
remember, ask the questions. But anyway, how did you make your work stand out as you were starting out, or was it something that you did change in approach, new work, people that made a difference to you? Similar to what we were talking about,
yeah.
but yeah.
I suppose I've always been quite lucky in the fact that, um, like you you kind of need things that are going to make you bubble, I suppose. And like I've always been quite like up to date on music. I knew who I liked and who was going to be great and all of that stuff. And and like, you know, I got really lucky with Storms and have managed to work with Storms a number of times throughout my career, but also like, you know, shooting one of Tom Grennan's first music videos, or like, you know, just working with artists on a regular basis as well, I think is something that is really good, because then you can develop the artist's videos with your style. And then like I did that about 2 or 3 years ago. Like it was like very much like working with a core group of artists throughout the whole year. And that was really great because then you're kind of not synonymous with that artist, but you've helped build a whole world with that artist. And I think like in my early career, I mean, really, I did, yeah, it was like, I think when I did the Stormzy Crown like live performance, that's probably when it kind of like, I really not stood out, because I think that's kind of nonsense, but I don't think you ever really stand out. I think just someone takes notice of the work that you're doing. And for me, that was Mike. And like, you know, Mish, who's now like, uh, she like, yeah, runs the music and production at Amazon Music and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I've always had key pillars in my life who have seen and appreciated the work that I've done. And then with working like with Mike and with Mish and with Annie and like all of these people, you then work with your core team and develop that. And so it's a really hard thing, because I think like standing out is probably like more what like Gabriel Moses is doing now. Like he's very much in his own lane and doing his own thing, and really his career is quite has well, on the surface it's been quite short, right? So whereas in reality he's worked for years and years to get himself to a place where he's making the work in the style and using the language visually that he's using. um so I think like in terms of standing out, it's like who do you want to stand out to and all of that. And I think in reality, yeah, I think that like maybe grates on me a tiny bit. Like, I don't think it's about standing out necessarily. I think it's about just making sure that you find the home that's right for you, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
I love your approach to it because it's like almost kind of like it's very holistic from what I'm noticing. It's like it's very much like, yeah, the clout, yeah, 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 but like wrong place, it's not gonna be what you think it is.
No,
Like
and
so
also I think from my experience, like anyone who's kind of made a massive video, they might go on a run where they make a number of massive videos, but are they still going to be around in a year? Like, who knows? Whereas, like, I want to work and I want to create, and it's not necessarily about like doing the thing that people will think is the coolest. Like, it's I take every project and I go, can I learn from this? And if I think I can, or if I think that I can help an artist that maybe needs help, then I will do that project. And whereas I think a lot of people will be like, I want this video because that artist is great and all of that. Whereas like my view to it is kind of like, don't get me wrong, like I'd love to make a video for Kendrick Lamar, like who wouldn't? But also like there are other artists that I think you can learn just as much working with.
that was an amazing answer. I'm gonna round this off with what do you see for the future in your future in terms of like what you want to do and also just like working with Untold. Um and yeah, if we mix in like what it's like working with Untold and just like the future stuff that you want to do.
Yeah, I mean like Untold is I've been Untold for like 5 years now. So they definitely feel like home. I think like as always, the industry's forever changing shape, and we're trying to evolve with that and work out what the industry will look like in the future. Um, for me personally, I suppose it's like working on a closer level with particular artists and helping them to like not just their videos, but kind of develop kind of holistically again their kind of whole brand and then also kind of hoping to move more into like a narrative world, maybe some short films, and then yeah, just try and keep learning. I suppose is kind of my most important thing. Like if I don't feel like I'm learning, I get really bored and quite like grr. Um, so I think like that's something that yeah, if if anyone wants to take that as like advice as well. Like I think it's important to feel like you're still learning and you're not always right. And I think as directors we have such egos and most of the time we're wrong. Um, so so yeah, like learning maybe some more narrative, some bigger commercials, bigger music, hopefully everything bigger, just like that. And you know, hopefully trying to help more young people get into this industry for whatever reason they want to.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much
No, it's a
for
pleasure.
coming on. That was a perfect place to end it. Thank you so much. Guys, this is going to be available on the Shiny website, so head over there. Thank you, Charlie, for coming on, and thank you, Untold, for having us. And good luck for the future.
Thanks, man.
And yeah.
And see
Um,
you in real life soon, yeah?
yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Perfect. Right on.
Let's give her a drink.
All right, sick. All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
Peace, dude.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.